What's up, guys? Patrick Bateman here. I know it's not Halloween anymore. This was my Halloween costume. I was Patrick Bateman for Halloween. I tried to get this video out in October before Halloween, but on the count of the fact that I work 2 jobs, I'm a full-time student, I was sick with strep throat, and then I had an allergic reaction to the antibiotics that I took when I had strep throat that basically made me break out in hives all over my face, and I didn't want to record a video then. The video didn't come out in October, so sorry about that. But we're here now, and we're going to talk about American Psycho. So you probably know what American Psycho is, even if you haven't read the book or even watched the movie. You probably know the memes. I mean, it's been memed to death at this point, I feel like the movie has.
Is that a gram?
New sandwich. What do you think?
Whoa, very nice. Look at that.
Picked it up from the deli this morning.
But if you don't know what American Psycho is, written by Bret Easton Ellis and published in 1991 by Vintage Books after Simon & Schuster dropped it, it's considered one of the most controversial books of the 1990s due to its graphic depictions of violence, particularly its violence against women. Many media outlets at the time blamed it for crimes that happened, specifically the Strathfield Massacre in Sydney, Australia. So yeah, I thought I'd give the book a read and talk to you guys about it. So with that introduction out of the way, let's discuss Bret Easton Ellis's American Psycho. Patrick Bateman is a 26-year-old man who works on Wall Street. He believes in taking care of himself, with a well-balanced diet and a vigorous exercise routine. When he's not talking with his friends about the nuances of what suit goes with what tie, or going to the best clubs in town where he snorts sweetener that he gets told is cocaine by drug dealers, Patrick Bateman has a little secret that even his closest friends do not know. He enjoys killing and torturing people and animals.
Stop it. Get some help.
The first kill that were actually shown in the book is that of a homeless man that Patrick murders. He stabs the homeless man repeatedly while calling him racial slurs, and then he stabs him in the eye, taking the eyeball out of its socket. I reach out and touch his face gently, and once more with compassion, and whisper, "Do you know what a fucking loser you are?" He starts nodding helplessly, and I pull out a long, thin knife with a serrated edge, and being very careful not to kill him, push maybe half an inch of the blade into his right eye, flicking the handle up, instantly popping the retina. The bum is too surprised to say anything. He only opens his mouth in shock and moves a grubby mid-hand slowly up to his face. I yank his pants down, and in the passing headlights of a taxi can make out his flabby black thighs, rashed because of his constantly urinating in the pantsuit. The stench of shit rises quickly into my face, and breathing through my mouth down on my haunches, I start stabbing him in the stomach lightly, above the dense matted patch of pubic hair. This sobers him up somewhat, and instantly he tries to cover himself with his hands, and the dog starts yipping really furiously, but it doesn't attack, and I keep stabbing at the bum, now between his fingers, stabbing the back of his hands. His eye, burst open, hangs out of its socket and runs down his face, and he keeps blinking, which causes what's left of it inside the wound to pour out like red, veiny egg yolk. The chapter directly after this, Patrick decides to lecture us on the type of music he likes. As if, nothing just happened in the previous chapter. Huey Lewis and the News burst out of San Francisco onto the national music scene at the beginning of the decade, with their self-titled rock-pop album released by Chrysalis, though they didn't really come into their own commercially or artistically until their 1983 smash, Sports. Though their roots were visible on Huey Lewis and the News, they seemed a little too willing to cash in on the late 70s, early 80s taste for new wave, and the album, though it's still a smashing debut, seems a little too stark, too punk. Examples of this being the drumming on the first single, Some of My Lies Are True, Sooner or Later, and the fake hand claps on Don't Make Me Do It, as well as the organ on Taking a Walk. Even though it was a little bit strained, their peppy boy wants girl lyrics and the energy with which Lewis, as a lead singer, instilled all the songs were refreshing. That's all I'm going to read because this is just a whole chapter on Huey Lewis and the News. So, yeah, that's all I'm going to read. The person Patrick really wants to kill, though, is this guy Paul Owen. Paul Owen is just slightly better than Patrick. He has a slightly better business card, manages the Fisher account, which I'm not exactly sure what that is, but it's apparently very prestigious and, everybody wants it. And he also calls Patrick Marcus Halberstram. He constantly mistakes Patrick for this guy, Marcus Halberstram. So Patrick he really wants this Paul Owen guy to die. After he hangs out with Paul Owen at a concert and a few other places, he decides to take Paul Owen out to dinner one night. And he makes Paul Owen drunk as hell and makes Paul Owen pay for the $250 meal. Then he takes Owen back to his apartment, where, as Owen's about to talk to Patrick about Iggy Pop, gets an axe to the face. Yeah, he just axes Paul Owen to the face. There's no Huey Lewis and the News monologue in the book. After the murder of Paul Owen, this is where we see Patrick Bateman's mental state aggressively deteriorate. He takes his ex-girlfriend from college out to dinner, and after getting her drunk, as well as making her read an aggressively racist poem aloud in the restaurant, he takes her back to his apartment, where he disgustingly tortures her in just graphic fashion. After this, we get a chapter about Patrick and his friends talking about the different brands of water and how more expensive brands of water taste better because they're filtered differently. What the fuck is this book? Patrick also takes two other girls back to his apartment, where he gets one of them high. I think he drugs them with ecstasy, and then he tortures one of them in just the most graphic fashion. Like, I literally have it in my notes underlined, like, what the fuck. Yeah, I'll just read it to you. Back in my bedroom, Christy lies on the futon, tied to the legs of the bed, bound up with rope. Her arms above her head, ripped pages from last month's Vanity Fair stuffed into her mouth. Jumper cables hooked up to a battery are clipped to both breasts, turning them brown. I've been dropping lit matches from Loreas onto her belly, and Elizabeth, delirious and probably overdosing on the ecstasy, had been helping before I turned on her, and chewed at one of her nipples until I couldn't control myself and bit it off, swallowing. For the first time I noticed just how small and delicately structured Christy was. I start kneading her breasts with a pair of pliers. Then I'm mashing them up. Things are moving fast. I'm making hissing noises. She spits out the pages from the magazine, tries to bite my hand. I laughed when she dies. Before she does, she starts crying. Then her eyes roll back in some kind of horrible dream state. So Patrick's depravity really knows no bounds in this book. It is really disgusting, and it is much more graphic than the movie is. He kills a child. He kills many animals. Oh, and he also eats a girl. Like eats her, like actually eats her. All of this culminates into Patrick having a complete mental breakdown and going on a shooting spree through New York, Manhattan specifically. He runs around Manhattan, he shoots somebody, steals a taxi, kills the taxi driver, drives around, wrecks into people, gets into a fight with cops, just all a bunch of crazy stuff, and it's written almost like an action movie. The novel also switches points of view here, where it says Patrick tries to put the cab in reverse, but nothing happens. He staggers out of the cab, leaning against it. A nerve-wracking silence follows. "Nice going, Bateman," he mutters, limping out of the store, the body on the hood moaning in agony. Patrick, with no idea where the cop running toward him across the street has come from. He's yelling something into his walkie-talkie, thinking Patrick is stunned, but Patrick surprises him by lunging out before the cop can get to his gun, and he knocks him over onto the sidewalk. After his murder crime spree, he decides to call confession into his lawyer. His lawyer doesn't answer the phone, so he just leaves a voicemail. "I left her in a parking lot near a Dunkin' Donuts somewhere around Midtown. And finally, after 10 minutes of this, I sign off by concluding, I'm a pretty sick guy. Then hang up. But I call back, and after an interminable beep proving my message was indeed recorded, I leave another. Listen, it's Bateman again, and if you get back tomorrow, I may show up at Umberto's tonight, so, keep your eyes open. Patrick doesn't seem to be finding any sort of references to his murders anywhere. Like, no one seems to know that they're happening, and he doesn't understand why. So he goes to Paul Owen's apartment where he killed Paul Owen. It doesn't smell like murder, So there's a realtor in there, and she's like, I suggest you go. And he's like, what? What's going on? Later on, as Patrick meets his lawyer at this club, the lawyer he mistakes him for someone else and just thinks he's, joking around, thinks it's hilarious. And even though Patrick constantly says, I'm not joking, and he talks about Paul Owen, his lawyer's like, yeah, no, I talked with him last week. He's alive. What are you talking about? One day, as Patrick's taking a taxi, the taxi driver seems to recognize him, and he says, you look really familiar, and he's trying to remember where he knew his Patrick from. And then he realizes that Patrick is the one that killed his friend. And his friend is the cab driver that died during the possibly during the crime murder spree right before he did his confession. And so the taxi driver kicks him out of his cab, robs Patrick, and then takes off. He takes his watch, everything like that, and then just drives off. After this, Patrick goes out and meets with his friends, where they all have conversations about the same old stuff. Suits, ties, whatever's going on in their sort of Wall Street world. And then Patrick monologues, and then the book is over. That's it. Let's move on to the analysis. Before we begin my own analysis of this book, let's look at the author's intent upon writing it. Quote, "There is something other than that. Whenever I'm asked to talk about American Psycho, I have to remember why I was writing it at the time and what it meant to me. A lot of it had to do with my frustration with having to become an adult and what it meant to be an adult male in American society. I didn't want to be one, because all it was about was status. Consumerist success was really the embodiment of what it meant to be a cool guy. Money, trophy girlfriends, nice clothes, and cool cars. It all seemed extremely shallow to me. Yet at the same time, you have an urge to conform. You want to be part of the group. You don't want to be shunned. So when I was writing that book as a young man, I was having this battle with conforming to what was then yuppiedom, the yuppie lifestyle, going to restaurants and trying to fit in. I think American Psycho was ultimately my argument about this." End quote. Now, what do I think about this book? Personally, I wasn't a huge fan of the book. I didn't find it super entertaining. I think it's really well written and it has a good message, but I didn't find it entertaining in the way that you would the movie. I liked it for different reasons, but the graphic scenes of just graphic violence, and it just wasn't for me. That stuff just wasn't for me. There's just so much of it. And then they'll spend pages and pages of him just talking about ties and suits and blah, blah, blah. And you're just like, God, this lifestyle would make me want to shoot myself. The world of American Psycho is one of consumerism, hedonism, and altogether self-serving behavior, all wrapped in a giant box of conformity. The conformity is so apparent that most of the characters are identical to each other and very difficult to tell apart except for the names. Like, they all sort of have the same personalities. Though they don't literally share the same face, they may as well, because each character almost shares the same opinions, the same values. They almost have the exact same conversations, and they're just all typically very similar, to the point where I really don't remember any of the characters from this book besides Patrick. They're surface level creatures, and Patrick really isn't the disease in this book. He is just a symptom of that conformity. He is a symptom of that hyper-materialistic world of the 80s, so much so that Patrick not only values material goods, but also Patrick looks to these people as nothing more than things to fulfill his appetite, figuratively and also literally, as in one scene he eats someone. I grind bone and fat and flesh into patties, and though it does sporadically penetrate how unacceptable some of what I'm doing actually is, I just remind myself that this thing, this girl, this meat, is nothing. There are also some underlying signs within Patrick's character of repressed homosexuality, as well as, of course, his repressed femininity. One of his co-workers in the book, Lewis Carruthers, is obsessed with Patrick after he tries to murder Lewis, but it's mistaken by him that Patrick is coming on to him. Patrick has such an extreme reaction to Lewis coming on to him that it isn't even disgust of Lewis, but it comes across as disgust of himself and what he might be feeling. Lewis is also one of the people he can't or won't kill, and it's never really explained why. There are a few times he tries to and he can't bring himself to do it. It's not until a confrontation out in public that he actually warns Lewis that he'll kill him if he doesn't leave him alone. While he has absolutely no problems killing Paul Owen, why is Lewis such a problem for him to kill? He also has sex with Lewis's girlfriend and constantly brings him up when her and Courtney are in bed together, when she barely brings Lewis up at all. To repress his homosexuality even further, it's possible that so much of the malice he exerts on women throughout the book is because of his own repression, a way to be able to feel in control and that he's not any less of a man. In this culture of yuppiedom that Patrick is in, there's a certain perception of masculinity that he has to live up to, and it's this culture itself that pushes him to this level of insanity, this extreme, unchecked, and unhealthy perception of what it means to be a man. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you give it a like, and if you want more book related videos, you can subscribe, check out my other videos that I have on the channel already. If there's certain books you want me to cover, just comment about them. I have a few ideas for my next video, like I thought about doing a video on books written by incarcerated individuals or prisoners, books written while people were in prison or published while they were in prison. I've thought about doing a video on that. I thought that'd be kind of interesting. But yeah, if you have any other ideas, things you want me to cover, just comment. Yeah, I appreciate any of the feedback I get. I'm still trying to make my videos better. I know they aren't the best they could be, but I try to make them better with each video. I'm learning, working with what I have on low funds. So yeah, thanks, and hope you have a great day.